All right.
Hello.
Hello. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this LinkedIn Live. My name is Fabian. I'm a senior consultant at Harnham, data and analytics solution provider. Today we got a very special guest, Piethein, CDO of Microsoft. Welcome, Piethein.
Thank you.
For the people that don't already know you, can you maybe briefly introduce yourself?
Yes, so Piethein Strengholt, I'm the CDO for Microsoft the Netherlands. I need to be explicit here. I'm in this role for roughly a year now. I joined Microsoft 3.5 years ago. I think most of you, or maybe the listeners, would know me from either LinkedIn. I'm quite active, also vocal on that platform, but I also publish a lot of technical articles on medium.com. I'm the author of the book, Data Management at Scale. And I'm also happy to announce I'm writing a new book, Building Medallion Architectures, also for O'Reilly. So thank you for having me here.
Nice. Yeah, you're welcome. And you have a date already for the book, or just tentative for now?
Not yet. So I hope to complete it in spring. It's more or less ready. So the writing more or less has been done. But yeah, I need to proofread it by many others and ensure it's technically correct.
Well, I speak to a lot of candidates, and a lot of people are very positive about the first book. So I'm
Great.
sure a lot of people will eagerly wait for this one as well. The topic of today will be democratizing data. That's very more commonly used term by each year. A lot of different perspectives on it as well. I'm curious, what is democratizing data and why is it important for companies?
Well, about the term itself, so democratizing data, the way I see it, it's really bringing data to all of the employees or users within the organization regarding their level or their role. So it's making data accessible to this wide audience in order to let them drive initiatives, so data value creation at scale. So that's where that term is being used for. But what it means, yeah, actually quite a lot. So it requires data to be accessible, user friendly. You need to have the tools also to allow users to immediately use that data at their fingertips. But you also need to have a governance body, for instance, and also the right culture. So it's also a lot about learning and skilling the users within the organization. So that's in a nutshell the way I would put it.
Mhm. And why is that important, and why should companies focus on getting there?
Yeah, I think honestly, there's tremendous of value sitting in data. But the issue often is how do we unlock that full potential? And I think today, lots of organizations rely on either a small or central team that sits somewhere within the organization. And then the users, they come in with their requirements and projects will be initiated. But that takes a lot of time. Typically, I see at organizations. So I think by democratizing data in a certain way, we allow users themselves to immediately unlock that value.
Mm. So you see the challenge that there is the workload as well for the central team can be significantly be diminished by democratizing it, I think.
Yes.
And yeah.
Yeah, yesterday, for instance, so I was in a meeting with Arun Ulag, who's the vice president and also the owner of the Microsoft Fabric proposition, and there we had a similar debate. So one of the questions and the discussions we had: should we lock certain experiences, for instance? But yeah, he was quite open and vocal about that. So if we allow our platform to be controlled by IT in a way we could lock all of these experiences, probably they will put knobs on all of the services and capabilities, and that would take data away from all of the business end users. On the other hand, the complete other extreme would be is we make the platform entirely open. That's probably what the business will ask for. And I think the ideal sweet spot should be somewhere in the middle where we allow IT to control and create such an environment which is standardized and can be monitored and can be overseen. But on the other hand, it's also really user friendly, accessible by all of these different business end users who would like to use and see what data is available. So that's, to me, the ideal sweet spot.
Okay. And what would be like the right strategy to go about this? If you want to democratize the data within the organization?
Yeah, most organizations I work with, I always ask first, so yeah, what is your intent? Do you have a business strategy and a data strategy that's anchored into it already there? So I think that should be the starting point. So what is your goal? Where do you would like to be within 2, 3, 5 years from now? How much data are you planning to unlock? Also, what is the investment you're willing to make and the risk appetite, maybe, for instance? So, and then after that, so once you have clarity on that, yeah, you need to start transforming to a certain direction. And this is really difficult because it's not about building a data platform or implementing data governance within your organization. The difficulty there I see is you need to mature on all of these different areas simultaneously. So you need to think about people, alignment, the governance, culture, skilling. You need to build a platform. And there, I feel organizations really struggle. And to give you maybe some examples, so sometimes I see, well, yes, the platform is there. So a couple of weeks ago, I had a very interesting conversation, and the platform looked really great with data contracts and CI/CD, and everything was there. But unfortunately, there were no use cases, and the organization was not ready to use that platform. In other cases, I see lots of effort is being put in assigning ownership and ensuring all the processes and the policies are there. But then the platform is not mature enough. So data is not properly onboarded, not made accessible in a user-friendly way. So data maybe is still too technical for users and users to work with it. So it's about balancing, I think, all of these different elements in the right way.
And I know you speak a lot about the medallion architecture as well. Can that help implementing that architecture to segment all different types of data for the different users?
Yeah, the way I see Medallion, I think it's a nice prescriptive framework that could help organizations to logically organize their data in a particular way. So we start from the left, so we come from our technical source systems. Usually within those source systems, data is really technical, heavily normalized, could be of low quality data. There could be complex business logic, maybe even sitting within that data. So not ideal for users to work with directly. So we use that medallion architecture first for staging, onboarding that data into the bronze layer, so typically the raw layer, so the layer of ingestion. We make it accessible, queryable, also at that stage, and then we refine that data into the next layer, which we typically call our silver layer. And then ultimately, we make that data available through the gold layer, so which is the highest quality, so the highest level within that medallion architecture. And that's where data usually would sit within for the business end users, so for the teams and the projects to work with it. So medallion, in a nutshell, I think it's a nice and prescriptive framework to use and adopt that within the organization. And it could help, especially so when democratizing data at scale.
Okay. And you mentioned a lot of companies struggle with the whole transformation itself, like the different factors to transform that at once. What can leadership do to improve that and make the struggle as less as possible? You think?
I think build a good and sustainable plan. Huh? So where are you currently? What is the level of maturity, and where would you like to be in the next stages? But also, you should start and grow small. So do not disruptively start to remodel and change the entire organization. So it's growing in stages, and there it's progression over perfection. I often also tell organizations, and be realistic as well. I think also their managers should could learn a lot more. And also selecting the right use cases. So often also this is a dilemma. So we have these wealthy, I think, list of different use cases. And you would like to start with a use case, ideally that is easy to accomplish, at the same time delivers tremendous value, but also sets an example for the organization itself. So in some cases I see, yes, we start with a use case, but yeah, does not really represent really the rest of the organization. So then lots of people start to question immediately upfront, well, yeah, what is then the value of data? And I think, yeah, balancing and carving out all of that and finding the right use case is really difficult. So take a pragmatic approach.
Yeah. And how do you ensure that that process aligns with the overall business strategy, you think?
Yeah, those two go really hand in hand. So data often I see is considered as a technical transformation. No, it's a business transformation. So you should talk with your business stakeholders, those different business departments, and see what are the opportunities. So where can we use the potential of data to change and shape our business models? I think that's the starting point, and that should lead back ultimately into a technical plan of transformation. But those two go hand in hand. So it's a transformation as well, IT, but along with the business, because at the end, democratization of data, it's about bringing data to those business departments, so those business end users.
Okay. And yeah, Microsoft has a lot of tools which facilitates the democratization of data. Can you share some of those tools and yeah, maybe highlight what they do and how can they make life easier, so to say?
Yeah, we have many different tools. So to start off with, I'm most passionate about is Microsoft Fabric. So this is our end-to-end analytical data platform, so of the different services. What I feel is really great, it's a SaaS offering, so fully managed by Microsoft. So there's no need anymore to build complex deployment scripts or infrastructure as code. So you can immediately switch it on with just a single click. And then yeah, you open up all of these different experience. Also, what I like, it's very business friendly. So there's integration with Microsoft 365, so the Office services. There's a neat co-pilot even in there. So if you would like to build a report and you have never done that before, you could even now today use a co-pilot and just type in so the report you would like to put on the screen. It also helps you transforming that data. So that's one of the services. Another service I'm also deeply passionate about is Microsoft Purview. So this is our end-to-end data governance service. And that service for sure works also closely together with that other service, so Microsoft Fabric. But within Purview now today, for instance, we have a whole new business experience. So you could browse the catalog, discover data products which make sense. You can see the use cases you would like to use those data products for. There's also, again, a co-pilot that could help you, for instance, crafting and designing data quality rules. You could use that co-pilot as well for providing semantic context to all of these different data products. So that really helps also the end users within the organization to discover data. Where does data sit? From what applications do it originate? Who's the owner of that data? What is the business department that oversees all of these different data products, for instance? What is the quality? And also really nice within that product, you could even link it to your business strategy. So we have something there called objective key results. So say I'm the chief data officer. You could list out, so what are the key priorities and objectives within my data strategy? You could note it down and then start to link it even to data products and then see, so what data products contribute to my data strategy, for instance, and where am I at in that big transformation I'm working on currently. So that's another service. And then lastly, of course, we have all the power of generative AI. So we have Copilot now in Teams, in Office, but as well, you could start building your own Copilot. So if you would like to build an intelligent agent, for instance, you could do also now very well on our platform. And these are just a few of all the different services we provide.
Yeah, very nice. And yeah, back to the data product. So basically, you can then see which data product is more efficient, and that way you can, it's not all about the revenue, but you can see which product is more profitable for your organization or not. Yeah. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, spot on. So now in Purview, for instance, today, so you can open the catalog and then see an overview of all of the different products. You see the KPI, so the health attached to each data product, the number of users. So when we talk about how successful certain data products are within your organization, I think then you can look at the telemetry. So for instance, the number of data quality rules attached to it, or the number of critical data elements, or the number of active users really consuming that data product. And then from there, you can zoom in to, so where does this data product could be used for, the number of use cases. You could establish a data contract on such a data product. You can see, and it maps back to what business domain or data governance domain it belongs to, but also what are the data sets physically really attached to the data product. So, and where do these reside in your technology architecture?
Okay, thanks. I got a question here from Darcy. She asked if you could speak about the strategies for prioritizing stakeholder access to data in a data democratizing initiative. How could you decide when units or teams get access first, or a function of need, or a business interest is one of those? Is that something you can elaborate on?
Ooh, difficult. Yeah, there's, I think, no silver bullet. So the answer probably lies in different of these aspects. So I think most importantly, it's the value for sure. So when you look and talk to the business, so what is the value you can create out of that data for a particular use case? That's predominantly, I see, a driving factor. But it's also the feasibility. So although there might be high potential, if it's extremely difficult to bring live because you need to combine and integrate all of the different data sources you have within your organization, then I think that could also be a driving factor. So it's feasibility compared to business impact. And then there might be, maybe, for instance, other dimensions that could play a role. So maybe the maturity within a particular part within the organization could be low. So then a better starting point could be we start with a business department that has a bit higher level of maturity, and we can use that as, I think, as an accelerator then next to engage with other business departments within the organization. So it's tough, it's hard, and I also recommend, so take a break. So do not immediately jump in your technology architecture, but start, zoom out. So look end to end, talk to the different business departments, and have a fruitful discussion. So where do we see most value? What is the level of maturity? What is needed to go forward with these different initiatives? That should be the starting point, in my view. I hope this, Darcy, answers your question. If not, drop a new note.
I think, that explains very well. And I can imagine, because it involves every stakeholder within the organization, if you want to rush it, then just people will get left behind, and the process won't go as smoothly. So can you elaborate what steps are to make, and to make the data understandable and actionable for the non-technical users?
To make data understandable and actionable, right? So what are the necessary steps? I think quite a lot, really, to get to that point. So where you have data sitting within your platform environment that is actionable, user-friendly, understandable by your business users, that takes quite a lot. So the typical journey I see organizations start with is, first, business strategy, data strategy, identify the use cases. Based on those use cases, you should correlate back. So where does the data really reside within the organization? So in what sources is that data being stored? And then from there, that's the starting point of the journey. So when talking to the left, to the right, so start at the left with your source systems, establish the ownership. Next, you should onboard that data technically into a platform. For that, you need to have a platform. At a minimum, there should be a team overseeing that platform, and then the data should be onboarded, which is first typically technical. And then from there, gradually, it should be transformed, remodeled in a shape it makes sense, and it could be used by business users. And this is quite the opposite of data that resides in these technical source systems. So data should be really remodeled, transformed. And this is really complex, I see, within most organizations. So you need to have high quality engineers, but also good guidance in place to transform and integrate and model the data in a particular way, so it can be at the end used by these business users. So if business users would look at data and they would see tens of thousands technical tables, I think that does not really make a lot of sense and unlocks value. So the sweet spot should be denormalized, user-friendly data sets modeled around a certain subject area that aligns also with these different business strategies. I think that's the crucial part of this transformation.
Yeah, and Fabric, of course, can play a huge role within that process, right?
Within that process, but I also dare to mention, so Azure Databricks, so one of our most favorite partner services, also could help in that respect. So often I see at customers, it's either Azure Databricks or Microsoft Fabric. So these are the two main popular services within our ecosystem.
Okay. And does it differ per organization or per type of organization? What kind of approach they should take? Or of course, you speak to a lot of
Absolutely.
different.
So I see lots of variations, mainly first because of the size of organizations. So there are organizations that are small, don't have high maturity yet. There's a single team. There, typically, I see that still that central team has a very important role to play. So often I see they integrate and prepare and cook all the data in their environment. But then on the edges, so more closer to the business, so this is where then the democratization really happens. So in self-service environments, business users then would use that data from that central team. So but then when looking at typically larger organizations, there it's a bit mixed. So either it's still the central team, jointly maybe with other local teams who take ownership of the data and transform that data. But in typically really large organizations, I see there you see patterns similarly, what's being discussed now, data mesh, where we start to federate really the responsibilities from that central team towards more other teams, and then ideally business departments, domains themselves take ownership of the data and manage even the entire life cycle of the data. So within the source systems, all the way up to that platform and these data products. And then the central team typically has way more the role of overseeing, coaching, setting best practices, ensuring standardization is there. I think that's also critically important. So some organizations, they lose control because the business teams themselves decide, so what standard should we set and how should we model the data and what framework should we use. I think if that happens, democratization of data really end-to-end throughout the entire organization is really difficult. So also the central team there has a critical role to play. So central authority always must be there in all cases.
And you mentioned data mesh there. What does that exactly do? Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, data mesh was first initially coined as a term by Samak Degani. She worked at ThoughtWorks and really looked into these large monolithical architectures. How can we scale these with microservices and other technologies? And there she stumbled as well on the methodology of federating responsibility. So it's not only a technology change, but also very well more an organizational change where we shift responsibilities from that central team towards other teams. I think after that, she coined that term. Many vendors started to recognize that concern and also implemented many of these data mesh principles within their platforms and services. So if you look at now the vendor landscape, and all of these different tools and services already have these data mesh principles mostly embedded within their products and services.
Yeah.
So for Microsoft Fabric, for instance, we have domain orientation. You can set up domains, you can set up workspaces, and really align also the activities within the organization with different units within the organization. So the trend is there. I hope this answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned, of course, data literacy is also huge within data democratization. What would you recommend as an organization to take a proper data literacy approach? It's
Start
a long,
small. Yeah, it's a
process.
community. It's a long process. So it really requires fortitude. My colleague from the data governance department team, he always says, well, it's a team sport. So it's not owned by someone single individual within the organization. No, it's all of the employees within the organization should own this subject. It's a long-term transition, but again, there start small. I see lots of organizations They do very well with organizing community events. They foster a community of collaboration within the organization, and team members start to reach out and help each other. So they discuss what is needed in order to build a high quality data product, or they teach each other on what typical tasks you should perform when owning data. For instance, setting data ownership. I think important there also you need to think about what are the usual personas you should have within your organization. So a data owner, for instance, an application owner, a data product owner, maybe sometimes I even see. And there, the difficulty really I see also within organizations is you need to align these personas also with the different roles and responsibilities you typically see within these different platforms and services. So as an example, so we have within Purview a role called data product owner. So that's the role you would have then to manage a data product and to add more metadata and for instance, create relationships between the data assets and the business terms. If you as an organization have defined a role as, for instance, a data steward, but the role of a data steward, so internally within your framework, is also about managing data products, then you should also give it the role of data product owner within the other product, so of Purview. So you need to think about how do you make that alignment between your internal framework and the personas you have, and as well the roles and responsibilities that come with all of these different services. And this is daunting task, also really I see within organizations.
Yeah. And have you seen examples of that going very well? And can you maybe share the result of that, of how the company was before and after, or you don't have one of
Oh,
those?
yes. So one example I like, but maybe some other readers or listeners would like that. But I recently encountered a company and they said, well, we just conform ourselves to the roles and responsibilities we see in these different products and services. So they take that as granted and copied that over into their own internal framework. So the personas in that way really well align also with the roles and responsibilities you have within our different services. I think that's an easy example, but yeah, that requires you to conform yourself to our products and services. I would not recommend that. So ideally, start the other way around. So look what is needed yourself, and what is the framework you would like to go after, and what are the roles and personas and processes within that framework, and then start to map and align it. But again, this is a difficult task. So you could, I think, also balance that out maybe a little bit, where you start initially with personas yourself, and maybe you calibrate a little bit these roles and personas also with the way of working within these different services and platforms.
Okay. And what type of KPIs should you measure this process, and you can see if it's going in the right direction or not?
For democratization, yeah, it's I think quite a lot. So what I see, and it also varies between organizations, but you could look at more from the data product creation side. So how many data products do we have actually in our catalog? How many of these data products are being used? What is the quality of these different data products? You can see a trend. So do we see more data products being created and being consumed over time? Other organizations, they go a bit further, which I really like. So they look really at the business value. So what is the increase of revenue or the cost reduction? And can we link these objectives or these results back to these different data products? And then you could qualify some data products over others based on really the business value you create. And no, this is not only revenue or cost, but it could also be very well. I talk to a customer and they find sustainability very important. So also those good goals you could set for yourself, for the impact on society. So that is value as well in itself.
Yeah.
So, but in other cases, I, for instance, see we look way more at the community. So the democratization. So how many users, employees do we have really trained, got their certificate, know how to navigate easily within our platform, are part of the community, for instance. I saw another organization, they created internal videos and a course, and they measure the quality of their progress by the number of watches and the number of users who subscribe to that internal channel. So that could be also a way to look at it.
Okay, nice. I got here a question from Vasmi. Hi, Pete. In a complex business setup, once the use cases are identified, should the organization also start looking at domain-driven decentralized shift or focus on getting business value first? I am asking because at some point, decentralized approach could be the way, but when is it the right time?
The right time, I feel it's the level of maturity should be there. Some organizations, I think we should also be fair, will never get there because they do not have the skill or the number of technical employees within their organization to achieve that full level of decentralization. Also, I often say start with centralization first because this is a really difficult transformation and you need to have a lot of prerequisites in place. So there should be a platform, proper data governance, processes should be clear, accountability should be clear. The metadata model, so that it's quite a lot it takes. If you too soon start to federate and decentralize activities, I see a clear risk that costs might explode, or you might see technology proliferation because you haven't set any standards. There's no clarity, for instance, on how you could do data quality within your architecture. If you start to federate too soon, all of these teams would like to do likely data quality themselves and start to decide, so what is my framework I would like to use for performing data quality. If you end up with a jungle of different data quality solutions, and the same for integration transformation frameworks, it will be very hard to oversee end-to-end data quality, end-to-end lineage, end-to-end all of your different data products. So centralization comes first, and also a certain degree of maturity before you could start to federate. So if I talk to customers, what I recommend, so the first stages should be, it's the central team who's in the lead and helps along with other teams and departments in order to figure out how could we build these data products and onboard data in our platform. And then typically after that, there's kind of this hybrid state where the central team starts slowly to guide other teams and they start to hand over some activities to those other teams. And you should carefully monitor and watch how that goes. And that could, for instance, lead to a backpedaling exercise where, okay, well, we went too fast. We take back these activities and put it again yet in that central team. And maybe it remains and stays there a little bit longer. And then slowly you start to mature and federate. But it could also very well, you end up in a situation where maybe some parts of the organization, they use data intensively. And there you see lots of data democratization and ownership, and they do it themselves. Well, maybe in other cases, no, it's still that central team who does the main part of all of that work. So it could also end with a hybrid model where you have still that central team guiding other teams as well, taking ownership of lots of these activities. So it's not one or the other. It could also be very well a combination or a hybrid model. This is also something I often see where people look at data mesh and they see it as a binary choice. So it should be either fully centralized model, IT does everything, or the other extreme, no, we disruptively throw all the activities over the fence to other teams. No, it's a transition and it's not a binary choice.
There's a middle way, so to say.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's way more nuanced.
Yeah. And scalability. Can you elaborate a little bit about that? Because for fast-growing organizations, that can be also maybe a point to consider.
Yeah, scalability. Yesterday evening I was writing the other chapter for that book, and there I was describing what scalability really entails. So it's a certain level of maturity, so like training and guiding people, and it's data culture, literacy. Everybody knows what to do, speaks the same language, knows the true value data could bring. to the organization. Ownership should be set, the governance should be clear, the processes should be well described. But scalability also sits in more the technology dimension. So all of the manual processes, for instance, are taken away and things are way more automated. So you have full CI/CD implemented. When you make changes to your infrastructure, for instance, you could easily promote that from development, test to production. But the same when you make changes to your data sets or your integration pipeline. So you have CI/CD as well, so you can promote that easily. In some cases, I even see organizations, they combine these two efforts. So they continuously test changes to the infrastructure as well, changes they make to software. It's all combined and integrated. So that's quite a high level of scalability and maturity they have reached. Scalability is also in community building. So do we all know what a good data product should look like? What is the most essential data we have within the organization? How should we describe that? So there could be a community also overseeing that part and scalability. So if you, for instance, see on the consuming side, there are many data sets that need to combine and integrated and cleaned every time. Is that efficient to let all of these teams to do that work themselves? No, maybe you would like to do one shift left within your architecture and bring it to another team or central body or community that oversees and ensures that scalability can be achieved by ensuring we have higher quality data products within our architecture. So teams really at the end of the chain can drive the value themselves. So it's many different dimensions.
Yeah. And of course, you see lots of ongoing processes within organizations, a lot of client visits. How do you see the future for data democratization at this moment? Of course, there's a long way to go because it's fairly new. But yeah, as you mentioned, it can go quite long, but also fast at the same time. So I was wondering, what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I'm really passionate about all of the different technology developments we see. So now with generative AI, we could, in the future, I hope, predict what kind of integration we would like to do within our data products. There's a co-pilot sitting next our side, helping to write efficient code for integration, building reports. There's a co-pilot in the catalog helping us to navigate along the way. Maybe at some time we could even chat with our data products and have a natural conversation via microphone like this. So give me inspiration for different type of use cases, help me to provision fully automatically that self-service environment. So technology will certainly evolve and will make this, I think, lots of the complex stuff will be taken away. But at the end, the complexity really lies within more the organizational aspect. So how do we transform? How do we align our business departments? What is the role in the future of central IT? How can we set up a community to help each other within the organization to generate value? And this is a part that you cannot easily solve with technology. And this is the part which will remain still.
Definitely. I got a question from Ugur. Hi, Piet. How can companies maintain efficiency at scale while decentralizing and federating their data?
How can you remain efficient? I think, we already, I think, touched upon that. So when scaling and when you start to move and shift responsibilities away to other teams, take a slow pace. It's progression over perfection. I think there should be a closed loop. So each time when you start to hand out activities to another team, look and ensure how that goes. Do we not see technology proliferation? Do we adhere to standards, policies? Do we follow all processes? So it should be carefully followed and watched and managed. I think that's probably the answer to remain efficient in that sense.
Thanks. I also have a question from Jeroen, which is quite relevant, I think. Can you talk a little bit about security when tracking a huge project such as data democratization? With more data come greater risk, so some of our senior stakeholders are concerned about that. which is a valid point, I think.
Yes.
And can you elaborate on that?
Oh, yeah. Security is, it's really an important subject. I think even today within Microsoft, we feel it's one of the most important subjects we should talk and educate customers about. Yeah, it's the answer sits in many different things. So, for instance, on the cloud with Microsoft Fabric, you can make that platform really fully secure. So, for instance, it starts on the outside. So, how do you get access? For that, you need to have a managed identity, be part of Active Directory. You could think about enabling multi-factor authentication. So, really ensuring you know the users that come in. You could even build in additional gateways. So VPN should always be enabled. You should come from a trusted environment. You could set policies, so trusted policies even on that level. So that's maybe from the outside, but on the data itself, there you will also learn there are many different ways you could protect that data. So you could slice it up and align it with different parts of the organization, or you could put it in workspaces and different domains. So not all of your data is just a giant pool of data. No, it's properly managed by those people who know and trust that data most well. So you could isolate your data by segmenting it out throughout different workspaces and domains. And then one level lower, you have users maybe you would like to not give access to all data, but parts of that data. So you could give them access to individual lake houses and workspaces, warehouses and reports, for instance. But even there within, we have more policies you could set. So you could even think about really fine-grained security where you apply on the deepest level within your lakehouse or workspace or warehouse, row-level security, column-level security, dynamic data masking. But also important, so the classifications, they're also as well play an important role. So there should be a catalog overseeing, so what data is most sensitive. Data should be classified. When you work with external parties, maybe you would like to mask the data or depersonalize data that's most sensitive. So there are many, many, many different ways. For those who are listening in for Microsoft Fabric, but as well for Azure Databricks, we have white papers, especially on security. It's an important subject. Many customers ask a lot. How does this work within the platform? What could I do myself? So I encourage you, Google for Microsoft Fabric security white paper. There's a lengthy document providing tons of insights and details with our learnings as well learnings while working from customers.
Yeah, huge point, of course, for a lot of stakeholders. Got another question from LA. Can Piethein speak about the pains and pitfalls to watch out for when handling legacy or poor previous processes that are being used heavily by business when implementing a new strategy? And how can you manage the transition?
Hard question. Again, a bit of repetition here, but it's a transformation. So take it slow. So in that case, so when you see there's lots of legacy and outdated processes and people do not work in an agile or DevOps way, that will make such a transition really hard. So maybe you should take a low pace there and maybe consider first, so could we not make a small jump first by moving that legacy application first towards the cloud, and we transform the way that team works. So we implement agile and DevOps disciplines first within that part of the organization. If that's not possible for whatever reasons, and then there could be still maybe that central team helping along. So I see lots of cases. Yes, we have legacy systems outdated. We do not plan to modernize these applications, so we will continuously to maintain these applications in a traditional way. Fine. But then, you could copy in the technical raw data, and that will work also for on-premises environment. We have connectors, we have integration runtimes you can deploy on-site, on-premises. But then bring it to a more modern environment. And then from there onwards, you start to manage it in a more modern way with a central team that is well mature, knows how to work agile, DevOps, can take ownership of that data. In some cases, I also see organizations, they have lots of on-premises and outdated systems. They ingest all of that data into the modern cloud, but they align it back also with the originating teams. So although the applications remain on-site, on-premise, there's an alignment made with, for instance, that bronze layer of the medallion architecture we talked about. And we know what data sets originate from what applications. And we ensure at that moment in time, so when we ingest data into our modern data platform, we align the ownership at that level. So the application owner feels at least accountable for the data for that part. Although it's central IT managing that data and building the pipelines and overseeing the ingestion process. And then slowly over time, you start to change, adapt that way of working. So maybe you will move that application to the cloud and look at DevOps and agile methodologies. Or you allow business users from that department to operate within your data platform. So they start to build integration logic for building data products. Or maybe at the end of the chain, you do some alignment. So although the first part is complex, legacy managed by a central team, it could also be very well at the end of the architecture where you have these data products created by that central team, where the business users then, still from that legacy team, use the data themselves in their reports or self-service environments, or they use a wrangling tool or something like we have mapping data flows Gen 2, where you can visually, no code, low code, start to inspect and work with the data, build your own transformation logic if you wish. So it's an organic transition, step by step. Take a slow pace.
Bit by bit,
again.
Yeah. I have one more question from Vladislava. How do you see the evolution of cloud technology contributing to the democratization of data?
Yeah, I see now an evolution, at least in cloud, where in the past still we have lots of platform as a service deployments. So you on the cloud, you could democratize and federate, decentralize with a subscription model, and you ask teams to take ownership of parts of the cloud in which they can manage these resources and deploy these resources themselves. But I see a big transition from that model towards way more software as a service. So where all of the complexity is managed by Microsoft, and we give you user-friendly tools or a user-friendly environment to work within, and you do software configuration. So you set the guardrails and you set up the teams who should work within such an environment via software. So you do configuration. So you set up the domains, the number of workspaces, you onboard your users. And this is really the trend I see more and more these days. So expect more software as a service, more of these type of subscription models where the pain of managing infrastructure and managing all that complexity yourself will be taken away and will be transitioned to we as big tech companies.
And then to finalize from Mike, in your experience, what industries are democratizing data most effectively? Is there a particular industry that is leading in the way?
Yeah, I feel it's always the financial services industry, the financial sector.
Most
and why?
regulated.
Because it's most regulated. There's so much regulation, and they are really data driven because all the reporting insights, there are teams like Know Your Customer to prevent banking fraud, those processes are fully automated, data driven. You see generative AI, machine learning is everywhere within in those processes, but also at the end of the chain. So I worked for a large financially regulated institution myself, ABN AMRO. Lots of regulation we had to comply with. And the common theme is, we need to do very well when it comes to reporting to the regulators, providing transparency towards our investors, also the external regulators. So data is really at the heart of all these organizations. So I think they're most mature, but you see also lots of other industries are ramping up. Local governments, now I see really the trend is they are catching up. So lots of conversations I have these days with the local government. So it seems they have woken up. They see the power of generative AI. And especially I think for use cases where there's not really sensitive data involved, but it could give tremendous, I think, benefits for traditional processes, bureaucracy, lengthy processes employees need to follow. I think in those cases, I think generative AI will bring tremendous value and will make employees way more efficient. So in finding information, how many information workers, for instance, do we have within the Netherlands? Probably 1 million or even more. I think if we can make them a bit more efficient, just a few percent or maybe 10%, look at the value it will bring us as a society. So tremendous value and impact.
And do you see that there's action being taken on that potential, or they're still a bit hesitant at the moment?
It's both. So yes, they are hesitant, but we as Microsoft work very hard to have an open dialogue with them and to show really how you could be successful in a fully secure environment without any risks or at a minimum risk. So there's lots of things you can do, but I think organizations still don't know yet. I saw a really nice example lastly. I worked with also again a customer, local government, and what they have done, I think, brilliantly. So they looked at all the regulations. So the newest AI Act, for instance, took that regulation and translated that into a framework, really concrete. So these are use cases, for instance, you could always allow and work with. So there's no or limited risk attached to these use cases. And in order to go live and to be successful, it only takes this. And there are simple processes then to follow within that organization. And this is a really concrete example. So you can still start. I again always encourage, do not start with the most controversial use case using personal, highly sensitive data. No, start the other way around. So look where do you see lots of potential without harming anyone. So
in the little things, basically.
in the little things, and it is really easy at that as that, and there's limited or in lots of cases even no risk involved in those use cases. So start with that. I think that will bring tremendous value for everyone.
Agreed. I think that's a nice point to start wrapping it up. Do you have anything to add to maybe that you think is important to mention?
Yeah, it's a transition for all of us, and we are still learning, I think, especially now when it comes to generative AI, what it brings, the value, and also where the truth lies in, what is acceptable from a risk perspective. Please reach out. I'm happy to have a conversation, open conversation with you, all organizations that listen in. But up and foremost, I think democratizing data, there's so much value for all of the organizations out there to look at this and consider this. Start small, start with a business strategy, and it's organic growth, progression over perfection. That's the only thing I can say.
Well said, well said. And where can people find you if they want to read
via
more?
LinkedIn is most easy for me, or if you take my first name dot my last name, so Piethein.Strengholt@microsoft.com. Everybody is free to drop me a message.
Great.
Happy to continue the conversation with them.
Thanks. Thanks a lot, Piethein. For the people that are also interested, Harnham released the first salary guide today, specifically for the Netherlands, which gives a general overview of the data market in the Netherlands with average hourly rates and average salaries. Specified on each domain: data engineering, data science, data governance, etc. So you can go to our page, harnham.com, to download that. It was a pleasure, Piethein. Thank you much.
Yes,
thank you very much for joining. We had a good conversation, and see you next time.
Yeah, hope to see you next time. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Yes. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.